Hi, welcome back. Right off the bat this week, I want to make something abundantly clear. Excuse me. As I'm sure you saw on the video title, this one is called Ethical Necromancy, and I don't believe I've made any secret on this channel that I have my own personal spiritual and metaphysical beliefs. I try to keep them separate from this channel but in quite honesty, in a lot of cases, their spiritual alchemy and my spiritual beliefs are very similar. Um, whenever, uh, whenever a magus or magician works magic, a lot of it takes place in the subconscious realm, and so a parallel can be drawn between the work we do here on the Transformative Alchemist, where we are strictly scientific based and strictly reprogramming our subconscious with symbolism, with what I do in my other spiritual beliefs. So that being said, while this is called Ethical Necromancy, I don't want any of my viewers to feel as if I'm pushing my beliefs on anyone, or even that, that what we discuss about today will be like, working magic. All of this can be viewed just as, from a psychological standpoint. And so I just wanted to make that abundantly clear right off the bat. Secondly, there won't be a ritual at the end of the episode today, because basically everything we will be discussing is ritual in and of itself. So yeah, I think that's all the things that I had intended to mention, like right off the bat. On this channel, and particularly in this Alchemy of Loss series, if you've watched the other videos, you have heard me speak a lot about the death of my second wife, Sarah, and how I've worked on alchemizing the pain and the hole that was left in my life following that honestly traumatic event. Some of the stories I've shared, I've also mentioned my first wife, Farrell. What I don't think I've mentioned is that Farrell has also now passed on to the other side. It was just a couple years a couple years after Sarah's passing. When my marriage to Farrell ended, it did not do so on good terms. In fact, I usually refer to my marriage as violently imploding. We'd been married 15 years, had been friends even longer. We briefly dated in high school, and then maintained a friendship through most of our life. But because the end of those 15 years were so, I don't know the word I want to use here. I don't like speaking ill of the dead. Difficult, perhaps, challenging, but even those underplay just how bad it got at the very end. So yeah, like I said, it was bad. And once we separated and divorced, we both pretty much severed all contact with one another. I always thought of her as this dark cloud looming over the horizon somewhere in my future. When my daughter-in-law was pregnant with our granddaughter, I was thrilled, of course, but in the back of my mind, there was also that question of, how is this going to work with family functions? Because quite honestly, I mean, I didn't, after, like, it'd been like, 10, 12 years since we'd split up, and I no longer harbored her any type of resentment or ill will. I simply didn't want the energy that she would bring into my life. When we first got together, she was very much a hippie. We were raising our son in Charleston, West Virginia, the capital city of West Virginia, which is pretty small. If you hear that, I'm sorry. There's a big truck going by on the highway. Usually my noise cancellation does a pretty good job with it, but that one was louder than usual. But so we lived in like the west side of Charleston, which was a pretty rough neighborhood. Not really somewhere that is optimal for raising a son. But she tried to bring magic to it. She wore these like flowing tie-dyed skirts, and she always had a little jar of bubbles and a bubble wand in her hand, and she'd be like walking down the block to the corner store and blowing bubbles the entire way and just filling up this like rough neighborhood with just these beautiful bubbles floating through the air. Wanted to give that memory because that's a very good memory of her. As I said, though, toward the end, it was like got really bad. I often said that it felt like I woke up one day and my wife had been replaced with a stranger. Now, I'm not saying all the trouble in in our marriage was her fault. Far from it. I had my own roles I played. What it really boiled down to, I think, is that yes, we both loved each other, but I feel that we made better roommates and friends than we did husband and wife. But our marriage imploded so bad that, even that wasn't a possibility. All this is a roundabout way to getting to the point that I wanted to make, which was that when my son told me that his mom had passed away, I mean, at first I felt like, I felt sad, mainly for him. Like I said, it'd been like, like we were apart almost as long as we were married. So many years had passed. And so yeah, at first I was just like, sad, but it didn't really affect me too much. It was about 3 days later, however, I was sitting at my laptop and I was thinking about her, and I pulled up a picture of her when Devin, our son, was probably about 5, 6 years old, and he's sitting on her lap with a little kitten, and he's just beaming a smile, and her eyes are just sparkling with a joy that I had not seen in them for a long time. And as I was looking at that picture, I was listening to a independent radio station from Minnesota. The Current. I'll give them a shout out. I love the Current. I was looking at this picture, and they played the song "All the Good Times" by Angel Olsen. Except for a couple lines in that song, when I listened to it, it really does sum up my marriage to Farrell. And all of a sudden, the the emotional waters just burst through the dam, and it hit me. It hit me really hard. I mean, she was a big part of my life for a long time, you know? And I'd gotten to the point where the last few years completely, where they were so bad that I allowed them to completely overshadow the beginning of our marriage. And I was sitting there and I was looking at this picture of her and our son and our kitten, listening to Angel Olsen, bawling my eyes out, and I was like, there was a reason I fell in love with this woman. And to only focus on and remember and share stories about the end of our marriage when things were so bad, it's actually a great disservice to her. And I apologize, Farrell. Sorry I ever did that. So, it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of necromancy so much into this. Oh, that'll give me a chance to emotionally reset here. That is a third point that I did want to bring up in the short introduction to this, is that anytime necromancy is mentioned in these types of videos, you always get, it seems like, one person in the comments saying, well, technically, necromancy only means divination by the dead. And that's true. That is exactly what the word means. Just like, divination with cards is cardomancy. The mancy is the divination part. What happened, though, is that, around the time of the Inquisitions, necromancy became a much more general term, and it wasn't just like using bones to cast as if they were dice or anything like that. It began to just mean any type of nefarious working with spirits, which was akin to heresy, which was akin to a date with the Inquisition and the stake. So when I speak about necromancy, I am using it in that general term, that general sense. I know what it means. I know that using it in the context that I am is not really accurate to the meaning of the word, but honestly, that's just semantics and is neither here nor there. Getting back to the topic at hand. So if you look at necromancy as any work with the spirits or loved ones, or from a more scientific standpoint, the memories of those who have passed before us, that's how we're viewing this here. I had a ritual that I developed after Sarah's passing that I employed, and it was usually on important dates, such as her birthday, Valentine's Day, Thanksgiving, the date she passed. I don't like using the word anniversary there. I know a lot of people use that word, but in that context, I don't like using the word anniversary. Sometimes I would do this ritual just because I missed her. Now remember, all this can be viewed from a purely psychological standpoint, and I think you'll see that as we go on. So I called the ritual for Sarah my date night ritual, and honestly, it's an all-day ritual. most of the time the dates fell on work days, and so I work from home on my laptop, and so I have the opportunity to listen to a lot of music throughout my day. So during the day, I would listen to all of our favorite songs. I would also, randomly speak to her throughout the day, which, honestly, that part wasn't anything really out of the ordinary. Um, After the end of my workday, I would formally invite her to date night. In our home, we always bought these scented candles from Walgreens. It's the only place we could find this particular scent. It was called whiskey and tobacco, which smelled a lot better than what that sounds. Anyhow, so every weekend we were burning like these whiskey and tobacco scented candles all weekend long. And so I have one of those, and I would sit at a table, and I would take the top off of it. I would lift it up to my nose and just breathe in really deeply, just breathe that scent right in. And as I did so, I would say, this is the smell of our hope. She always had this particular this compact of, I'm a man, so it was some sort of like makeup. It was a compact with a little mirror, one of those like little pad things where you dab it on your face. So she had always had one of those that I loved the smell of. And so I would open up one of those and lift it up, breathe in the deep again, and so I'd say aloud, this is the smell of your skin. She used a particular type of argan hair oil, and I would like squirt a little bit of that onto my fingertips and rub it in and smell it, and then say, this is the smell of your hair. Her favorite perfume was Vera Wang, so similar with that, spray it. Then I would just, formally invite her to date night, and I tried to keep our traditions, especially on date night, the same. We always, whenever we'd get off work, at the time, I did not work from home, but whenever we get off work and we get home, we would always divide the workday from the rest of the evening by playing a game. We were big on board games and chess, and so I have a couple single-player board games, my favorite of which is Horrified American Monsters. Just complete and total shout-out for that. I love that game, and it's still a lot of fun to play single-player. But I would... So on date nights, though, I would set out a player card and token for her, and I would also take her turn. And I would have the candle burning where she would be sitting. And as I played the game, I'd have a running commentary, about the game, with her, such as, doesn't look like, Gus is going to make it to the gas station. Looks like Mothman might get him. We might lose this one. Just a little like one-sided banter throughout the game. When it came time to make dinner, I would prepare one of our favorite meals, like a chicken Kiev was definitely a favorite. That's some good stuff. And while we had, her and I both loved like really, really old music. I'm talking like 1930s and 40s old. And we have this album of old LP by a band called the Ink Spots. If you play Fallout, you'll know who the Ink Spots are, because they feature heavily on the Fallout soundtracks. But the Ink Spots was considered our dinner music. It's what we would play in the background while we were eating. So of course on date night I play that, and then the date night rounds off with watching one of our favorite films, such as 30 Days of Night. I love that one, and it was one of her favorites. She loved. We both loved horror. Um, and that was my date night ritual, and it really did make me feel closer to her. From my spiritual beliefs, there were some times when I could feel her presence with me. Those of you in the psychological camp will, probably argue, well, that's just because you were drawing up, all these like memories and it just became so clear in your mind. Well, I accept that as well. Both of them are valid to me. I do not see spirituality and science as necessarily being mutually exclusive like so many other people do. So that was my date night ritual, and it really did make me feel closer to her. Even if I didn't feel her presence with me, it made me feel close to her. So I'd also talked about Farrell passing. Developed a slightly different ritual just a few days ago, because she had been on my mind a hell of a lot lately. And so I felt the need to, kind of connect with her and her memory. And it's not as elaborate as date night, what I did, but music was important to me and Sarah as well, but it was also important with me and Farrell. Music has been a huge part of my life. So I made a playlist of just a bunch of her favorite songs throughout, the years that I had known her. And I took my ancestor wand, which was pulled this out of the woods in Duluth before I moved back to Virginia after Sarah passed, and I shaped it here, and that's neither here nor there. I took my ancestor wand, and it served as a focal point while I meditated. Again, being that traffic out there is horrible today. Being a ceremonial magician, I believe that, there is, power in the tools I use, but that power is also psychological. It becomes I have 3 different wands, and what I refer to as my ancestor wand is strictly and specifically for working, with the memory of loved ones who have passed. So if you look at that in spiritual alchemy as a subconscious symbol, then anytime you pull that out, that signals to your subconscious that you are preparing to enter that space. I may get very distracted by seeing myself on camera. The longer I do these videos, the worse the quality seems to get. It's more and more of me cuts out and bleeds from the video, and it drives me nuts, and I hate it. I am working on getting a better setup to where I won't have to worry about that type of clipping. But for now, it is what it is, and I apologize if it annoys you as much as it does me. Anyhow, going back to the topic of wands, so when you pick up the wand that has a specific purpose in your hand, that is a signal to your subconscious of what is to come. And from a spiritual alchemy standpoint, it basically acts as a primer, priming your subconscious so it knows what to expect. People's favorite music, the songs that really resonate with them, they actually reveal a lot about that person. If you just sit and listen to them. So I was meditating with my ancestor wand, had this playlist of Farrell's, favorite songs playing as I did so. And I was just, listening to them, and they gave me a whole new perspective, and it really made me sad for her. She did not have an easy life. It's not my story to tell, so I won't go into details, but she did not have an easy life at all. And I realized that what happened at the end of our marriage, that a lot of that was trauma response. There was just unresolved trauma that she had carried with her. And once I realized that, I felt a lot more, I felt closer to her again. And I apologized to her. Not just like I apologized earlier, but apologized on behalf of humanity, really. And told her how sorry I was that she had such a go of it in this world. And I wish her nothing but peace and love. And if we really do reincarnate, I truly hope that she has a easier time of it the next go around. She didn't deserve the things that she went through. No one deserves that type of treatment, especially from people who are supposed to be protecting and loving you. But I'm going a little bit too much into what I said. This isn't my story to tell, so I'll just quickly back away from that. So yeah, I mean, that is a very simple little ritual. It's just a matter of, listening to songs, but music really does have magic in it. I mean, you think about it, there's sound waves, invisible sound waves that go through the air and they hit us, and they can cause a change in our moods, in our disposition. Music is very powerful, so it made a great little ritual. It actually turned out a lot stronger than what I thought it would be. And again, if you've watched these videos, you know I don't like the word closure. So I'll just repeat that it made me feel a lot closer to my first wife than what I had felt for a long time. Made me feel some peace, some much needed peace. So yeah, if I'm just gonna leave that there. I think this episode's gone on long enough. I really don't know how to wrap it up because my head's in just a million places right now. But those were the examples I gave for the ritual. I am not going to, list a step-by-step ritual at the end of this episode like I often do, because, these acts of ethical necromancy, these acts of communing with our loved ones who have passed on before us, those are very personal, and those are extremely intimate. And there is no way I could dictate to anyone what steps they should take to, make a ritual like that happen. I just mentioned my steps as, pretty long-winded examples to give you some ideas that maybe you can structure your own rituals after. So that's what I mean by ethical necromancy. Just connecting with those we love who have passed on, whether that be on a metaphysical level or a strictly psychological and emotional level. It doesn't matter. They're both just as powerful. So with that, like I said, I'm going to bring this episode to a close. I want to thank you again for spending this time with me. I hope to see you again in a future video. And until then, as always, walk in peace and light, my friends.